People are attending this evening?
We have 159 registered.
Wow.
Amazing.
So
Do you
we'll
feel
see.
like all the drama in Georgia has really increased the intensity of the interest?
Well, we've had these kinds of signups for the other ones before Georgia. So, probably for sure, at least a little bump. But
I mean-
all of the town halls have been popular so far.
I mean, this is why we're having it, because since January 6th, people have been feeling it at a very visceral level, right? About the fragility of our democracy, which what we're going to talk about today. So, and the Georgia law really put it right up front about what they're trying to do. So. So Jean, I have 4 o'clock on my laptop.
Sure, I think we should let everybody in and start
Okay.
recording. Oh, it is great. And we'll roll.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Michael Osterholm, board member of FairVote, Minnesota. Thank you for joining our Minneapolis Metro Democracy Town Hall, the fifth and final in a series of 5 democracy town halls that FairVote Minnesota and Clean Elections Minnesota have hosted across the state in February and March. Our world changed 1 year ago when a national emergency was declared in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, our nation's response has been often polarized and based on politics rather than facts, data, and science. We desperately needed an effective, functioning government, but more often than not, over the past year, we saw partisan bickering, dysfunction, and misinformation spreading like the virus itself. Unfortunately, our current electoral system is structured in a way that doesn't allow us to bring out the best in one another and to govern effectively. I believe ranked choice voting is one of the best steps we can take to redress the dysfunction in our current system and create a more representative government with leaders who want to focus on fixing problems, speak the truth, and unify the public for a common purpose. The fact that so many of you have joined us this beautiful Sunday afternoon gives me hope. We must all join together and commit at this crucial moment to work for reforms to strengthen our democracy. For more than 2 decades, FairVote Minnesota has led the movement to empower Minnesota voters with more choice and more power in our elections through more equitable voting systems. We believe ranked choice voting is a key to achieving this goal. And towards that end, we've trained and mobilized thousands of volunteers, educated hundreds of thousands of voters, and secured breakthrough wins for ranked choice voting in Minneapolis, St. Paul, St. Louis Park, and most recently in Bloomington and Minnetonka. We are among the dozens of states and cities using ranked choice voting, including the states of Maine and Alaska and New York City starting this year. Even before the events of January 6th, we were seeing growing momentum for ranked choice voting and other reforms here in Minnesota and across the country. But now there is no time to waste. We are seeing efforts in Georgia and other states, and even here in Minnesota, to suppress the vote. We need to not only strongly reject such efforts, but also enact structural reforms like ranked choice voting that can push back on extremism and specious attacks like the big lie and incentivize leaders to welcome more voters into our political process, not less. Ranked choice voting can do just that. It is time that we accelerate these reforms, and that is the conversation we are having this afternoon. The good news is that we have an amazing lineup of pro-democracy champions with us this afternoon. In addition to our special guest, Secretary of State Steve Simon, Congressman Ilhan Omar, and DFL Chair Ken Martin, we have 18 state legislators. That's incredible. Thank you for being here and for being such a strong democracy champion. Our state and our nation needs your leadership now more than ever. Ranked choice voting is one of the most important legacies we can leave for future generations, and I couldn't be more personally thankful for your efforts to advance this important cause. Now it is my pleasure to hand the mic to FairVote Minnesota Executive Director, Jean Massey. Jean?
Thank you, Dr. Osterholm, for your service on the front lines of COVID-19 and to the improvement of our democracy. FairVote Minnesota is very, very fortunate for your leadership on our board of directors. I'd like to, before we begin the program, also offer the opportunity to George Beck, who leads Clean Elections Minnesota, and they are our co-sponsor of tonight's event. And we would like you, George, to provide a brief overview of the work you are doing this session to advance democracy reform. George? You're on mute, George.
Let me start over again.
Hi, George.
Hi, my name is George Beck, and I have 2 shots plus 2 weeks, Michael. Happy to report. I chair Clean Elections Minnesota, and we are a nonpartisan nonprofit devoted to democracy reform in our state. We are very happy to co-sponsor the program with so many champions of democracy today. Briefly, the issues that we've been following and testifying about include support for the election reform in House File 9, Representative Greenman's bill. I think she's with us today. And it includes several important issues like public financing, dark money, contributions, released felons voting, automatic voter registration, and the mailing of absentee ballots to all voters. It's sponsored in the Senate by Senator Torres Ray, among others. Apparently there were so many people lined up to support it in the Senate that they had to have 3 or 4 bills. The bills passed through several House committees and should arrive on the House floor. We testified against the voter suppression in Senate File 173. That contains voter ID and provisional balloting. This bill has been sent to the Senate floor from the Finance Committee after a fiscal note dispute in which the author and the majority decided to rely on their intuition rather than the numbers supplied to them in the fiscal note. As you may be aware, this bill is part of a nationwide effort to narrow the electorate. It was roundly criticized. Ranked choice voting was heard in the House Local Government Committee on March 17th. It drew substantial support. My organization strongly supports it as the fairest and most democratic way to elect our public officials. Its antithesis, Senate File 708, a prohibition on ranked choice voting, which we opposed, was heard in the Senate State Government Committee and laid over. We are disappointed that we've not yet seen hearings on a national popular vote, on Representative Fraser's released felons voting bill, on Representative Long's democracy dollar bill, and of course, on redistricting reform. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you so much, George. And before I continue, I want to wish everyone who celebrates a very good Palm Sunday and a happy Passover. We will be working in solidarity with our Jewish friends and colleagues to advance the values of justice and democracy from oppression. This is all important to all of us who work in democracy space. We appreciate this is a holiday for many, so while we have a very packed crowd and we're going to go slightly over time, we will finish by 5:15 at the very latest. And here's what's lined up for today's agenda. We have more and more people come in. We have over 150 people signed up to attend, so hopefully most of you all will make it. And our lineup of speakers today includes Secretary of State Steve Simon, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, DFL Party Chair Ken Martin, and all of the legislators nearly in CD5. So we've got quite a lineup today, and we will begin by introducing Secretary of State Steve Simon. We know that he has been very busy this past year ensuring secure and safe and accessible elections for all of us, all in the midst of a pandemic. And then he's been he has been at the forefront fighting the disinformation campaign about the 2020 election. Trust in our democratic institutions and procedures is the foundation of a resilient democracy. Secretary Simon understands this and has been traveling across the state and nation by Zoom to ensure voters have the facts about what happened in 2020 and the integrity of our election system. He started his career in elections as the chair of the Elections House Committee. And among the measures he advocated was the ranked choice voting local options bill and giving communities the opportunity to use it if they wish to do that. We are truly lucky to have a Secretary of State that understands the value of reform and is determined to protect the democratic process. There's no one better equipped to help lead our state elections at this moment when our democracy has been under attack. We are grateful for your service, Secretary Simon, and to your commitment to democracy. Please all help me welcome Secretary of State Steve Simon.
Hey, thank you all. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming out again on a Sunday, even if just by Zoom. I really appreciate it. And maybe some of you have heard me say this before, but I like to say that I'm in the democracy business, and it really is an amazing time to be in the democracy business. But like any business, you need partners. And I'm so proud to have, FairVote Minnesota as among the foremost partners that I and we have collaborated with over many, many years. Jean, thanks to you and your entire team. We worked together when I was in the legislature, as you just mentioned, on ranked choice voting and on other initiatives as well. And I'm really pleased to be here. It has been a heck of a year, let's face it. COVID-19, as Dr. Osterholm knows, maybe better than anyone, has really affected all of us. It's affected, obviously, our health. It's affected our jobs. It's affected our families. It's affected our schools, and it has affected our democracy. Think about a year ago right now, in a couple weeks or so. In early March, we had our presidential nominating primary. Remember that? Seems like lifetimes ago. The day before the presidential nominating primary, which was March 3rd, is when Senator Klobuchar and Mayor Pete Buttigieg dropped out and endorsed Joe Biden. Remember that, leading to a cascade of victories for Joe Biden on Super Tuesday and all but clinching the nomination for him. That seems like several lifetimes ago, at least to me. And we knew at that time, or shortly thereafter, that this was going to be a different kind of elections, because just a couple weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, states that were to have had their presidential nominating primaries had to, in many cases, postpone them. And those that did hold them, like Wisconsin and Georgia, experienced what I can only call upheaval, if not chaos. You remember the scenes, I think, of the long, unconscionably long lines, and people out there bewildered, confused, angry, and ultimately, in many cases, shut out. And we resolved in Minnesota not to become that. So we worked hard to make sure that we had 30,000 election judges, for example. We worked hard to make sure that people understood and used their right under state law to vote from home without explanation or excuse. We worked really hard to make sure there wasn't conflict or violence at the polling place. Those were things that we didn't know at this time a year ago how they might turn out. But thanks to many people, including those on this call and peoples at all levels of government, we had what can only be rationally and objectively described as a very, very successful election in Minnesota, both because of the presence of the good things and the absence of the bad things. And when the dust settled on November 3rd, Minnesota, for the third time in a row, got to #1 in America in voter turnout. Third time in a row. 16, it was great. 18, we got that back there. But this three-peat in 2020 was the sweetest of all because it came during a once-in-a-century pandemic. And Minnesota voters, as you might expect, leaned in hard. They did not turn away. And that's a really good thing. That speaks well of us as a state. Now, don't get me wrong, we still have a lot of work to do. We can't bust our arms patting each other on the back, because we know that though we got to 80% voter turnout, just shy, that means 20% are not voting. And not every community, demographically or geographically, is voting in sky-high numbers. That's where I think ranked choice voting holds out particular promise. And I know other speakers are going to speak to that in particular. So where are we now? Well, yes, we're basking in the glow of a very successful election in many ways, but we're also dealing, and I know the legislators on this call, some of whom I see in my gallery view, bless you all, because you and I and all of us are dealing with a tidal wave of disinformation about the 2020 election. And normally, if someone just makes stuff up or lies about a certain set of facts, particularly past facts or past events, we wouldn't care as much because it looms and lingers in the past. The problem is that those lies, that disinformation is the wind beneath the wings of some pretty ugly legislative proposals. It has breathed new life into previously discredited proposals like a strict government issued photo ID requirement. I'm old enough to remember, and so are all of you, that just a few years ago, we had that debate in Minnesota. It was a knockdown, drag out, good faith fight. And in the end, Minnesotans, not by a tiny margin, said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't want that for our election system. But it is back, and it is cruising in the Minnesota Senate, in part because of the leverage, at least, these lies and this disinformation. I think one thing at a minimum we all need to do when we encounter that, whether in the legislature or otherwise, is speak truth in the face of those lies. And the truth is actually simple to remember, because here it is. The 2020 election in Minnesota and nationwide was fair, accurate, honest, and secure, period. That is the truth. Don't just take my word for it. Look at former Attorney General and Trump appointee William Barr. Look at Trump appointed FBI Director Christopher Wray, who just 3 weeks ago under oath in testimony before Congress said the same thing. Look at what courts, dozens of them throughout the country, have said about the merits of the challenges to the election, including here in Minnesota. So we have the proof, we have the evidence, and we know that the system is one that people have confidence in. Otherwise, they wouldn't be voting at such sky-high levels. But sadly, it has led to a lot of damage. And it's not just January 6th. I wish I could say that the fever broke after January 6th. I wish I could say that the fever broke after January 20th. It didn't. Look at what happened this last week in Georgia. Just look at what they did on the strength, again, of some of this disinformation. They have basically called open season on voters by allowing almost limitless challenges to people at the polling place. It could be based on race, ethnicity, you name it. They have taken away the power of the Secretary of State and put it in the hands of partisans. They have even, as I'm sure you've seen, made it illegal to give someone water, who is waiting in a long, unconscionably line to vote. And so it ought to make us angry. But as I've been saying, don't just get mad. Get Congress, get the US Senate to pass the For the People Act. I know that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and others have already voted for that in the House, but it's lingering right now in the Senate. Senator Klobuchar did a great job in her committee last week with that bill, but it faces a challenging path in the Senate. I would also say, don't just get mad. Also make sure that we can try as hard as we can to pass House File 9, which is Representative Greenman's outstanding, sweeping, and very necessary collection of reforms. She can talk about that more, I'm sure, later. All that is to say, we've got a lot of work to do in the democracy business. And I'm so glad that I'm doing that work with all of you, both with FairVote as an organization and with many of you that I can see on the call right now. Thanks for your time and attention. And thanks for all you do to make our democracy one of the best in the country. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Secretary Simon. We are so grateful for your service, not just here, but the entire nation knows that Minnesota is at the forefront of protecting our democracy because of you. So thank you. I understand that Representative Omar is having difficulty joining the connectivity, so we're going to wait on having her speak. And I would like to welcome DFL Party Chair Ken Martin. Ken, are you on?
I am.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And speaking about another democracy champion, he has been on the front lines of ranked choice voting in particular since you've been party chair, and this has been a big issue within the party platform, and you've been championing the cause all along, and we're grateful for your service to the party and for your service to democracy. Please help me welcome DFL Party Chair Ken Martin.
Thank you so much, Jean, and thank you, Secretary Simon, for his remarks and his consistent support for pro-democracy measures. I know I can speak for all Minnesotans in saying a real proud thank you to Steve Simon for being not only a vanguard of our democracy, but really standing up for our values as Minnesotans and making sure that any barrier to participation was removed. You know, this last year was trying, as you heard him say, but the coming months and years ahead are proving already to be even more challenging as we're facing an unprecedented assault by the far right in this country to disenfranchise voters throughout this state and throughout the country. I also want to acknowledge the fantastic work by my friend Emma Greenman for her tireless work on House File 9 which, as you've already heard, is our local version of Congress's House File 1 and the Senate's For the People Act. There's a lot of great items in that piece of legislation, and we're certainly hopeful that House File 9 moves through this legislative session. So thank you to FairVote Minnesota and to the Clean Elections Minnesota for putting together these series of town halls on democracy. Of course, as you heard Secretary Simon say, last week's events in Georgia are a reminder to all of us that there are people in our country who are determined to roll back voting rights, to make it harder to vote, to erode trust and faith in our democratic institutions, all of which will have a permanent effect on participation. And one thing we know, all of us on this call know, is that a democracy works best when more people participate, not fewer, which is why we need ranked choice voting now, right now. Given the assault that we are seeing around the country, one of the answers, of course, is ranked choice voting. As you heard Jean say, I've been a longtime supporter of ranked choice voting. Actually, back when it was called instant runoff voting and it was not as fashionable to support these types of voting reforms. The Minnesota DFL party has also been a longtime supporter of ranked choice voting and had it in our party platform, our core values document for well over a decade. In fact, last year when we had to move our DFL endorsing conventions into virtual spaces because of the pandemic, we used ranked choice voting in our endorsement process. And FairVote Minnesota, under Jean's leadership, was critical in providing the technical expertise we needed to make that transition. And thank God we used ranked choice voting, because without it, I do not think we would have been able to save our grassroots process, which empowers the voices of the many in our party. Now, our party supports ranked choice voting for many reasons, including the fact that it promotes a more inclusive, diverse, and representative elections while giving more choice and more power to voters. We know that to be the case, and it's been proven time and time again. But we also know that there are some bad actors who are trying to game our current system by recruiting imposter candidates to serve as spoilers and to siphon votes away from candidates. This gamesmanship is a perversion of our democracy, and again will result in elections that do not reflect the true will of the majority. Ranked choice voting will solve the spoiler problem and make sure that bad actors can't game the system. But let me be clear, the Minnesota DFL supports ranked choice voting not because it is good for the DFL, but rather it is good for democracy and for voters. And we should be doing everything we can at this moment to push in this direction, the direction of empowering voters in their democracy. Then what we have seen as of late, where elected officials are trying to take power away from the people and silence their voices, will be diminished. Only then can we truly have a democracy that reflects the will of the majority by passing good pro-democracy forms like ranked choice voting. I'm glad to be with all of you pro-democracy advocates today. We as a DFL will continue to stand with FairVote Minnesota and other pro-democracy advocates as we push reforms like this in the legislature. Thanks so much, Jean, for having me today.
Well, thank you, Chair Martin, and I'm hoping that you're evangelizing these reforms with all of your other party chair counterparts in states across the country, because Minnesota truly does continue to lead the way. So keep up that great work. And again, thank you so much. Now, I understand Representative Ilhan Omar is still not able to be with us. And in case she's not, I really want people to understand what she has been bringing to the democracy space and her important work in Congress and in the Minnesota legislature before she was elected to Congress. She has long been a champion of democracy reform. She understands that as a first-generation immigrant to the United States, what it means to have democracy and freedoms. And she really carries that work deeply close to her heart. She is a part of the Voting Rights Caucus, and she has been a co-sponsor of H.R. 1 and fighting for passage of that reform. And hopefully she'll be able to find a connection that works for her and join us and share her own personal perspective with all of us. If not, we'll find another opportunity to have her speak with all of you today. And I'm in touch with her campaign. So as soon as she's able to join us, we'll know she's here. So we now get to move on with hearing from all of our state legislative champions of democracy. And we have several. Now I'm seeing some of you were not able to be here today, but I'm going to call on most of you. hoping that you're able to join us at some point here this afternoon. And I'd also like to recognize we've got at least one local official with us tonight. Vice Council President of Minneapolis City Council, Andrea Jenkins, is with us, and we'll make sure she has an opportunity to say a few remarks as well. So why don't we begin? And I know that Senator Scott Dibble is with us. So Senator Dibble, could you please spend a minute or two and share with us your deep passion around ranked choice voting and other democracy reforms and why these issues are so important to you?
Sure, I'll do that. I'll try to keep it to 2 minutes because I know we've got a lot of folks to hear from, and I'm more anxious to get to the Q&A part of our town hall tonight. So, but thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Dr. Ulsterholm and Ken and everyone. And I want to just also echo my incredible sense of gratitude and excitement and support that we have the most amazing Secretary of State in the whole country, and Steve Simon. And for those of you who don't know, Steve Simon really does visit every single county in every corner of the state to talk about why the foundation of our democracy needs to be remain strong, and we need to have faith and confidence in our election system. So thank you. I want to recognize Steve Kelly, former state senator and good friend of mine. He's here with us tonight too. And I am excited about ranked choice voting for a number of reasons. Of course, as has already been so well articulated, anything we can do to make people excited and meaningfully connected to their own democracy, their own government. This is a representative democracy, and when we vote, we should be voting our aspirations and our ideals, and feel like we're connected to who we're voting for and what we're voting for. And ranked choice voting gives us that opportunity. We, of course, are a kind of a binary system of two parties. We're not a parliamentary system. And we have tremendous amount of political diversity and a lot of diversity of thought. I can attest to that being in the DFL caucus of the Senate, where maybe in another system, someone sitting across the way from me in the caucus room might be in a party that's substantially similar, but a little bit different, and we would be in coalition together. And we would come together on most things, and we'd have a governing coalition, but we'd separate on other things, and that's all fine. It's not how it works in our system. So obviously the breadth of our political expression is a little bit hampered by our two-party system. And I think ranked choice voting really gives us that opportunity to fully express ourselves. When we get elected through ranked choice voting, then we can look to who voted for us and why, and understand when it's time to govern what the nature of our mandate is. And I think that's extremely important information. Of course, there's incentive to be civil, be kind, campaign on ideas, because we want to be someone's second choice, perhaps. And so the politics of annihilation and division and rancor aren't rewarded in a ranked choice voting system. And I just wanted to take one opportunity quickly to pitch a bill that I have. It's Senate File 937. It's being carried by Representative Long in the House as House File 1395. And that would create a constitutional amendment that would call for elections or require elections to be free, fair, and open. That has been the foundation that we've used in other states to overcome gerrymandering and campaign finance laws that tilt in an unfair way, or some of these efforts to diminish and discourage voting. We don't have that kind of guarantee as a baseline in our own state's constitution. So I'd encourage folks to take a look at that. I'll put a link to that language in the chat. Thanks, Jean.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Dibble. I know you've been at the forefront of all of these issues for quite a while in the legislature, and you being there for a long time really makes sure that we can have an effective process for getting through the Senate, and hopefully we'll have a pro-democracy Senate very soon. I know that other senators are unable to be with us right now, but let me just call you out in case you're here. Senator Dietzick, Senator Fata, Senator Kunish, Torres Rey. Oh, I think none of them could join us at least yet. We'll see if they can join us in just a bit. And now we have several representatives with us, though. I know that many of you are here. And could we begin with you, Representative Agbaji? Are you still here? Hearing none. And I do believe I see Representative Fischer on the screen.
Thank you, Jane. Yes,
All
I'm
right.
here. Glad to be here. Thanks everybody for being here this afternoon. I think what many folks have said already. I mean, we're at a really important point in our history in terms of what we want to be in and how we want to do things moving forward in a democratic way. What I see around the state, what I see around the country in terms of bills that are moving in, well over 200 something bills now that want to suppress the vote. And mainly they want to suppress the vote for people that look like me. I mean, what I saw after the most recent federal election was the huge turnouts, the turnouts in communities that haven't always turned out to vote. And many of them turned out because they were engaged. They were engaged by politicians. They were engaged by grassroots organizations that really wanted them to come out and be heard and want their voices to be heard. And now we see a backlash of that to turn that back and exclude people that should have access and that should have their voices heard. And in a democracy, we need to have their voices heard. I've said several times that the way we have our system set up now with the two-party system, I'm glad that Senator Dibble touched on the coalition building piece. I think is vitally important. Right now, we don't have an incentive for politicians, elected officials to build coalitions. Right now, what we have is a system that you can dig your heels in, go back to your core base, and you can govern in that manner. Even if that manner means that your core base has a minority voice and minority views on things, you can govern in that manner and still be in power. I think ranked choice voting gives us an opportunity to facilitate more coalition building, gives us an opportunity to hold politicians accountable so that they have to reach out and connect with every community and every constituent that they're going to represent. That's why I support ranked choice voting. I think it's vital for our democracy, and I think it leads us in a direction in the future of our democracy that we need to get to and we have to get to. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Representative Fischer. And I'll note Representative Fischer is chief author of the first clone bill on ranked choice voting. Representative Steve Elkins is chief author of House File 89, and we have two clone bills now actually in the House and in the Senate. It's a very popular bill, and I'm grateful for your advocacy of that, and of course your advocacy around restoring voter rights and other democracy issues. And I believe Representative Agbaji is now with us, I believe. And
yes.
Great. And Representative Agbaji is the chief author of our third clone bill. So thank you for carrying that legislation and being such a strong champion. Glad you're with us.
Yes, thank you. Glad to be here this afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Again, I don't think I can say it better than anyone else has already said, but ranked choice voting, as we know, is one of those ways to ensure that we are discussing issues, that we're discussing policy, that we're looking at who has our best interests at heart. And I think particularly in races that we've seen most often in Minneapolis and St. Paul, where ranked choice voting is already in place, we get to have those broader discussions rather than just focusing so much on the personalities. And I do hope that ranked choice voting, especially in light of what we're seeing happening nationally, where we're making it harder for people to vote, harder for people to express their voices, that we can push forward with ranked choice voting in Minnesota to make it much more easier and accessible for people to express their ideas, their preferences, and what's important to them. So I think that we're on the right step here in Minnesota. I want us to continue moving forward, making sure that people do have that consistent access to the ballot box. And I think ranked choice voting is one of the tools to help us get there. So thank you guys so much, especially FairVote, for the work that you guys are doing to push this forward.
Thank you, Representative. And hopefully you all so far who have spoken can stick around for Q&A. We're going to try to get to that as soon as we can. And for those of you who've got a question, just put them in the chat box. I'll see them there and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Next, I'd like to call on Representative Emma Greenman. You heard from Secretary Simon her good and important work on being the chief author of House File 9, which is akin to HR 1 in Congress, and a really important bill that encompasses several measures around democracy reform issues. Representative Greenman, welcome, and please share with us your work in carrying that legislation.
Thank you so much, and I am so grateful to be here with all of you. This has been a hard week for our democracy. And as somebody who spent a lot of time, I was in Georgia in 2018, I was in Arizona in 2016. I come really grateful to be in this space, really grateful, the Passover starting yesterday, because this is, and this is just where I'm at today, but this is a real fight and a real struggle. And we right now are in a place where we're fighting for the fundamental premise that every eligible person should be able to vote and every person's voice matters in our democracy, and that participation is actually not just allowed, but required to have a thriving, multiracial, multi-generational, gender inclusive, multi-regional democracy. And I think that there's work we're doing at the federal level, there's work we're doing at the state level, but I'm grateful to share space with you, and I'm grateful because I think, this is a long-term fight. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight. And so the work that we're doing around all of these proactive bills, and frankly, the work that we're going to have to do to fight back the bad stuff that is, as we heard, our partners in the Senate, Scott Dibble's on the line, but I know that Senator Port, who has been carrying the companion of House File, I think it's 422 is the Senate file of House File 9, the Democracy for the People Act, are also gearing up. And so what I will say is, I guess, three things. One is, I think that when we sat down to create a bill, what I know is that teamwork makes the dream work, and all of you on this call, our great Secretary of State, our great Attorney General, our great party chair, amazing colleagues in the House. And I know that on the Senate, they're working together too. I believe that the Senate has adopted House File 9 and 422 as a caucus priority. And so we really together need to draw the line and say that this is going to be our fight. We're fighting for every Minnesotan. We're fighting for every voter, and we're fighting to center the voices of Minnesotans. And what we've learned from the fight in House File or of HR 1, the For the People Act, is I was involved in that as an advocate, and it took us 3 years to get here. And so the work that they've done at the federal level has been really important and powerful. A lot of coalition building, a lot of working together, and really a fight that is taking years, and that's the fight that we'll have too. And so I say that to sturdy us, because I think whether it's ranked choice voting, whether it's automatic voter registration, whether it's the redistricting reforms, the campaign finance reforms, the disclosure, all of the pieces that my friend George Beck described my bill probably better than I could. Those are things that need to be must-haves, and we need to strategically work together to get there. And then the last thing I would say is, I think that the public is with us. We are on the side of fighting for, at the end of the day, this is not a bipartisan issue. This is a nonpartisan issue. We are fighting so that every Minnesotan, regardless of their background, their race, their generation, their region, every voter in Minnesota has a stake and can participate. And as my colleague, Representative Fischer said, the attacks are not, like everything else, are not falling equally. They are going after Black and brown voters, Indigenous voters, young voters. And so it's got to be on all of us to say we're going to fight for this inclusive democracy. And so I am charged up today to be here with you. And I will always be happy to talk about the policy details. But I think that the fire that we should all feel after they criminalized giving water to people in the polls. And that didn't happen overnight. What they're doing in Arizona right now, and going after Latinx voters, what they're doing in Pennsylvania and Ohio and North Carolina and here in Minnesota. So I am excited to be in this fight with you. Sorry, Jean, I took a little more time. And I am excited to have a proactive democracy expanding a conversation, because I think that that's how we win this fight. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Representative Greenman, for firing us up. We're getting going now. We're really, really grateful for all of your longtime work on these issues. And now you get to push them forward as a member of the House of Representatives here in Minnesota, and we're super grateful. Representative Freiberg, you are next. You have been a longtime champion of ranked choice voting and other reforms as well, especially as chair of a committee last year, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on these issues.
Sure, thanks. And I'll keep them brief, because I know there's a lot of people and we want to have time for questions too. So first of all, thanks for having this event, for the great lineup of great speakers. It's kind of a lot of tough acts to follow, so I'll certainly do my best. But just to talk about ranked choice voting a bit, I mean, certainly when campaigning has been such a negative experience, anything that can make candidates more positively inclined towards each other, I think is hugely important. And the experience from the cities that have put ranked choice voting in place shows that that does happen. If you need to get somebody, if you want to be somebody's second choice vote, you're probably not going to want to attack their first choice vote. So like right now we have kind of a zero sum game system where people can win with less than 50% of the vote, and that happens from time to time. And Ken Martin, I think, spoke pretty well about the possibility of the spoiler effect too. And I think that's another reason that ranked choice voting is so important. We have 4 major parties in Minnesota right now, 2 parties that ostensibly support the legalization of cannabis. However, stories have come out that show that the Republicans have been very devious in getting candidates who don't actually believe in that, but are just intended to siphon votes away from Democrats. And it's had a real effect in a couple legislative districts. We had democracy champions in a couple districts, and they did not win the re-election because the sham marijuana candidate that was recruited by the Republicans siphoned enough votes away. So if we have a system in place where you're able to rank candidates, that sort of thing won't happen. And that, that's not just an issue that could potentially affect Democrats too. It's certainly a possibility that there could be sham candidates at some point intended to siphon votes away from Republicans. So ranked choice voting, I think, has the potential to solve a lot of these issues that our campaign system has right now. So I've been a longtime supporter of it. I'm happy to continue to do it, and looking forward to our question and answer period.
Thank you, Representative Freiberg. Representative Hassan, are you still with us? And thank you, Representative Freiberg, for being a co-author of the ranked choice voting legislation, as is Representative Hassan.
I'm here.
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be here on a Sunday afternoon and have so many great people. This Zoom room is full. That tells you that everyone is fired up about our democracy and ways to protect our democracy. I'm not gonna make a long speech here. I'm gonna make it super short. We have seen what the consequences of elections when we elect the wrong people, because we had abuses for 4 years. We have seen, BIPOC communities being attacked, immigrants being attacked, refugees being attacked, Muslims being attacked, women being attacked, the LGBTQ community, every group, minority group being attacked by the commander-in-chief. Thankfully, we no longer have that commander-in-chief, and that's the consequences of elections. Yay for us, but then what happens when we all organize and come out and participate in democracy? Then we get the pushback on what's happening around the country today, that we have all of this election restriction and voter suppression legislations floating around. Representation matters, voting matters, and when people just talk about voter suppression, it's impacting the most vulnerable in our communities. It's impacting either our senior citizens, our BIPOC communities, our other minority communities, different religious groups. So it's directed towards one group or another that isn't mostly the mainstream group. So I encourage you to stay fired up, because we have a long way to go to fight for this. One of the reasons why I support ranked choice voting is it gives all of those underdogs and people who will never have a chance. It's about equity, it's about inclusion, it's about being fair to everyone and giving people a fair choice. And I think most people said it better than I can say it, but let's stay encouraged, let's stay engaged, and let's stay fired up, because our democracy is under attack. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hassan, and for your service leading the Posse Caucus in the House. It's really important work that you are all doing on these issues. Representative Sydney Jordan, are you with us?
Yeah.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Well, I won't take up too much time. I really think this should be about all of the wonderful FairVote volunteers and supporters who are here. So I want to make sure that you have your time to ask questions and talk to us. But I'll just echo what everyone said. I don't understand why anyone wouldn't be in favor of ranked choice voting. It's always seemed like a really common sense reform to make elections better and to make our systems that, you know, support and craft our laws, which make our lives better for everyone, a better system and a more fair system. So I don't know why anyone would be against it. It's great to have a lot of champions here, and it's always great to, you know, talk about the Minneapolis region, which I know is a FairVote region, but it's a real honor, and we're all really lucky to be served by extraordinary leaders at every level. And it's wonderful to work with organizations like FairVote and other pro-democracy folks to craft the very best policy that we can. So I'll just hand it back to you, but thanks for being here, everyone, and thanks for being in this fight and making your democracy reflective of your values.
Great. Thank you, Representative Jordan, and for your co-sponsorship of the ranked choice voting legislation. That's awesome. And I believe we also have Representative Cheryl Joachim with us. Representative Joachim, are you still here?
Yes, I am. I just want to say thank you for putting this event on, and thank you to, in particular, Secretary of State Steve Simon and Representative Greenman and FairVote for all the work you're doing right now to make sure that our democracy is safe for all, whether it be ranked choice voting or House File 9. All those issues are in the front of many of our minds as we're watching at what's going on in the rest of the country right now, particularly in Georgia. So just want to thank you for hosting these events and getting the word out, and a special shout out to George Beck and all the work he's done around making sure our democracy is safe too from dark money. So thank you so much and look forward to the questions.
Great. Thank you, Representative Joachim. There were some other representatives who were unable to join us at the end tonight. Representatives Davney and Aisha Gomez, Samantha Vang, Mahmoud Noor, Frank Hornstein, and Jamie Long. And if any of you did show up and we don't know that, holler please, and we'll make sure that you have a moment to speak as well. So we will then wrap up our presentations of our local representatives with Representative Sandra Feast, who is also a co-sponsor of the ranked choice voting legislation. Representative Feast.
Yep, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. I was like, I'm here. So yeah, nice to see everybody. As an immigration attorney and somebody who helps people become citizens and earn the right to vote, it's always been very deeply meaningful to me. And I'm also a former ACLU of Minnesota board member. And so I have spent a lot of the last decade just fighting for the right to vote. And when people email me to say they are pro voter ID, I send them a link to an article that I wrote in 2012 telling them why it's a bad idea. So I also really love to share my own personal experience with ranked choice voting. Became ranked choice vote because of COVID. And my district had 6, oops, my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me? Am I still here? Okay,
good.
So we had 6 candidates and everyone was really wonderful. And all of the kind of talking points around ranked choice voting really were evident in that experience. First, it was a really cordial relationship that we all had with one another. And most of us continue to stay in touch and to talk about policy and to have a really nice friendship that developed as we were running against each other. And I do think that the ranked choice voting structure of the election helped with that. Also, we definitely reached out to more people in different ways because of the ranked choice voting structure. And I was thinking that just this weekend, I was emailing with people who did not vote for me as their first choice, but we nonetheless developed a really great connection and relationship while I was running for the endorsement. And I don't know that that would have happened in the same way if it was just a black or white, because I knew I wasn't their first choice early on. So I think that's the main thing. Yeah, and I guess I just do believe it's a better reflection of the will of the voters and a more holistic way for people to express their preferences. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. As everybody has said, our democracy is under attack and we all need to be really energized and really focused on this issue. And I'm just grateful for FairVote Minnesota's leadership and to be amongst
Thank you, Representative. And for all of the first term legislators who really jumped in this term to roll up your sleeves and get things done, even though there's quite a bit of obstruction in the Senate, especially around these democracy bills. But that will change soon, hopefully. I want to take a moment to also recognize a couple of other local representatives who are with us tonight from the Golden Valley City Council. We have Larry Faunist and Jillian Ronquist. Welcome and thank you both. Thank you for coming and joining us. And in fact, why don't we jump into questions with a couple of local focuses? I know that Council Member Vice President Andrea Jenkins wanted to just speak very briefly about the success of ranked choice voting in Minneapolis, and she is here. And then I've got a question from the Golden Valley City Council members as well. Vice President Andrea Jenkins, are you still with us?
I am still here, Jean. Thank you
Welcome.
so much.
And I'll note for the audience, Council Member Andrea Jenkins is also my council member, and it's an honor that you're able to join us tonight.
Well, it's an honor to be here with you all and having a discussion about democracy. And I cannot state any better than any of the almost 15 or so people who went before me and really covered almost every aspect of why ranked choice voting is a positive and a great thing, particularly Representative Huot Hassan, who talked about providing the opportunity for people of color, for low wealth candidates, for younger candidates to get engaged in seeking public office and have a real shot at winning. And so, I absolutely support ranked choice voting, but I want to talk a little bit broader about democracy. Everyone has mentioned Georgia, and State Representative Park Cannon is a very dear friend of mine. We met in 2018 at Harvard Kennedy School doing a senior executive program together. And then subsequently, she invited me to her family's farm cabin in Vermont, and then invited me to campaign with her and Stacey Abram in Atlanta, Georgia. And so she has been one of the key architects that helped bring us those two senators that just passed a $1.9 trillion America Rescue Plan that is gonna really go a long way towards saving our country. So I'm asking you all to please stand up for Representative Park Cannon, who was unfairly, unjustly, unceremoniously dragged out of her workplace for doing her job, for representing her constituents. It's just a tragedy. My heart has just been breaking all weekend. I keep seeing her getting dragged out of the Georgia State Capitol, which literally sits in her district. If any of you know Atlanta, the state capitol is right downtown in Midtown Atlanta, and those are the people that she represents. And so we must call on the governor to drop all charges and really stand up for democracy in all forms. Thank you so much, Jean.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jenkins, for bringing that clarity and that urgency to this work. It's just so true. We are witnessing things that we never thought we would witness, and they just never seem to end. So with that, I think we continue the conversation and get to all the questions that you have. We have quite a few lined up. We do promise that we're going to end by 5:15, so we'll take as many as we can. And at the end, we will send an email out with some responses to additional questions we see, as well as a link to all of the different legislative bills around democracy issues this year. So now I'd like to ask a question perhaps of you, Representative Frazier. We've got questions from the council members here from Golden Valley. They have taken the important initiative to pass a resolution and be in support of the local options measure at the Capitol for ranked choice voting and made it a part of their legislative agenda. Could you provide an update on the status of that legislation currently in the House and in the Senate?
Right now, I can speak to the House. Right now, we had an informational hearing in our local government committee, which went very well attended, very much support for testifiers that were there. We're now aiming to have another hearing after our recess for next week. I'm working on getting that hearing set up in the next committee, and I'll keep folks updated on that, and Jean can get that information out. We're probably looking at, we're not going to have a vote in the House this year, but we are continuing to build a momentum in hopes that we can keep pushing for the next session to move forward on this. We think the momentum is there. We want to keep momentum going. We think these town hall meetings have been great to do that. We think we have more growing support within the DFL caucus as we move forward. There were folks that initially maybe were not as supportive that are more supportive now. And so we just want to keep continuing to build that momentum and keep pushing forward. And hopefully we can move, get to a House floor and then continue to work in the Senate to see if we can get people moving along there as well.
Great. Thank you, Representative Frazier. Yes, on the Senate side, it was noted earlier that there was an effort to, and there always is another bill to preempt and prohibit ranked choice voting. So that's what the Senate's up to. I think we need new leadership in the Minnesota Senate. We'll advance ranked choice voting and all these other bills. So we have our work ahead of us in creating a democracy-friendly Senate. But in the House, it really has a lot of work ahead of itself. And we're really grateful for all of you on the call tonight for pushing ranked choice voting and the other bills forward. So while they may not all pass in the House next year or this year, they stand ready to do just that next year. And we need all of you to stay with us as we go on this biennium journey to pass these bills. So thank you for that. We had a question in the email before the meeting this afternoon on the status of the national popular vote. I believe Representative Freiberg, are you carrying that legislation or part of that legislation on trying to work around the Electoral College and have a national popular bill in Minnesota a part of that?
Sure. There's actually two bills. One, it would just adopt the National Popular Vote Compact statutorily. Representative Peter Fischer of Maplewood is the chief author of that one. And then I have a bill that would put national popular vote into the state constitution as well. It's, yeah, they've not been heard yet, but there is support, I think, certainly in the caucus for it. You know, they were part of our election bill, I know, in the last session. So it unfortunately, it's another issue where the Senate has kind of stood in the way of progress on it. But you know, I think, what are we at now? Like, you know, just it seems to be more and more happening more and more often that, you know, you don't just need to win the popular vote. You know, it seemed like most of the time previously, if a candidate won the popular vote, they would probably also win the electoral vote. But it seems like it's less and less like that way, and happening that way now. And you need to win more convincingly to get that. And you know, it's just kind of a relic, and you know, it was adopted for reasons that no longer apply anymore. So you know, it's certainly something I'll continue to keep fighting for.
That's true. Thank you, Representative Freiberg. Similar to our plurality system, it's one more tool of allowing the minority to rule over the vast majority of Americans, and that's why it's unfair, and there's a fight to help change that. We had several questions relating to redistricting, the reapportionment process this year in particular. Perhaps Secretary Simon, you can bring us up to date on where some of those efforts are at, if there's any hope for some redistricting principles at a minimum this year, and how the reapportionment process is likely to unfold between now and the time of actually having new lines drawn in Minnesota.
Well, I want to thank the legislators who have any hand, directly or indirectly, on this call or otherwise in redistricting. It's tough work. That said, if I had to predict right now, I would predict that once again, as has happened most of the last few decades around this time, it's going to be the courts who take out their pencils and draw these lines substantially. I think that'll be the case. I hate to be a downer here for any legislator involved in this process, but it's hard for me to imagine a conference committee on redistricting. You know, 10 years ago, one party controlled both chambers, another party controlled the governorship, and the governor just vetoed that plan, having seen it as excessively partisan. Here, And that was a stalemate. Here, there's even more of a recipe, it seems to me, for that kind of stalemate. I don't even think it'll get to the governor. And then you have the added complication of the fact that the census, because of delays over the last year or two, announced earlier this year that they won't have the block level data that is normally essential to actually drawing districts. They won't have it. It's normally ready around now, around late March, around early April. It won't be ready until late September, September 30th, which means it's going to be a really fast run to get these done. I just think it's going to be tough to get this done. Not impossible, I suppose, but really tough to get it done legislatively. So that would be my prediction at this point.
Right, thank you. And Martin, are you still on the line? What's your expectation about 7 versus 8 congressional districts? What are you hearing?
Well, we will hear the reapportionment on April 30th when Congress will let the states know. Everything we're hearing from folks in our delegation, but also from national demographers, is that Minnesota is going to lose a congressional seat, which none of us should take glee in. Obviously, we want representation in Washington, and losing a representative is going to harm Minnesota and our ability to get funds into our state. That said, given the population loss in Minnesota, the seat that will likely be lost will be one in Greater Minnesota, unfortunately.
Right, well, we'll follow all of that, and maybe we can just hope for the best on that one. So, and Representative Greenman, I believe you've got probably a few things you can add to this conversation.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say on redistricting, because I think that there is a lot that and I think as I talked to a bunch of advocates and folks in the community, I have heard more on redistricting in the last couple of years than when I used to talk about it in 2010, people's eyes would glaze over. And I think that there is a really important conversation that started. There's an important conversation around the census, but what we can do and what you should expect of us, and as somebody on the redistricting committee in the House, is we can and should and will go out and start listening to communities. People should be telling us what makes their communities. We should be thinking about what are communities of interest. This should be a process where we really tell and draw districts that show what Minnesota is now and the beautiful diversity that we are. And so I think that what you'll see is Democrats being committed to fair principles, fair districts, and districts that represent the state. And what I think is really important is we need to ensure that we're listening to communities that are telling us that. And that's going to be important for the courts too, because whether or not we draw this map or the courts draw the map, we need to create a record that shows that Rochester has grown leaps and bounds, and that is Somali immigration, and that is Latinx. Like, we need to show all of that, and we need your help. And so what I will say is, I think we need to be like, there's a principles conversation that we are having. There's principles in House File 9. There'll be a standalone. I know that the Senate is talking about that too. And the beautiful thing about redistricting is it is an opportunity for us to have a conversation about representation and about what our state is and looks like into the future. And so I don't want us to get caught in the, is it going to be like, we are going to have to go through this process, but it really should be a process that everybody feels invested in, regardless of the challenges that we have. So that's my pledge to all of us.
Great, thank you. While we still have you on the screen, could you bring us up to date on the status of HR 1 in Congress and what we can do there to continue to push it through both chambers?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
So I will put back on before I was in the legislature hat. So I right now on HR 1 in is in the Senate, and what I'm happy to report and really excited about as someone who worked really hard on this is I think that there is growing momentum in the Senate. We heard our own Senator Klobuchar, who really has a leadership role in this, because it's going to come down to the filibuster, and she is the chair of rules. And so I think that it is both critical that we keep encouraging our senator, both of our senators, but really our Senator Klobuchar to be a champion and really do the work she needs to do. I think the obstacles right now is the filibuster, but I don't know if folks saw what Senator Warnock said this weekend, but I do think it is really critical that we are having a conversation that puts this as a voting rights conversation, and what the real sort of threats as opposed to a procedural filibuster conversation. So everybody should be doing that, making your pitch. And but I do think it's really important that our own senator knows how important it is to all of us that she is leading and championing this, because she really has been a champion.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Senator Dibble, do you have your hand up? I know you've got.
I just actually Representative Greenman said most of what I was going to say, and I just wanted to just emphasize that it's not necessarily terrible news that the courts are going to be drawing the district lines. In our experience, they've been pretty much fair, but they don't draw those lines as Emma was saying, in a cave or in an ivory tower. There is a way to impact and influence the process, and so I hope FairVote Minnesota is going to have its oar in the water in trying to influence the lines as deliberated by the courts. And also, I hope the larger community knows how to get plugged in and involved. I actually had a role and worked with community to develop a friend of the court brief to inform the deliberations of the courts a number of cycles ago. And I think it had some effect. They don't really tell us, but we think it has some effect in what they were thinking about lines in the area where I live.
Thank you for that clarification, Senator Dibble. I think it's important for everyone in the audience to understand that Minnesota has not faced the most extreme forms of gerrymandering that other states have had, because we've been reliant on the courts to, in the end, draw those boundaries, and hopefully we'll come out of that fairly good this particular season as well. But it will be delayed, as Chair Martin said. So that's the process we'll be following. I'm just going to kind of skip over that one since Representative Omar isn't with us. We had a couple of questions on the status of voter restoration legislation. Cedric Fraser, if you're still with us, if you could respond to that, and anyone else who's been working on that legislation.
Sorry, Jane, could you repeat the last part of that?
Yes, just the status of legislation around voter restoration and giving rights to all voters. Mm-hmm.
So we did have a hearing on that bill. It passed out of the committee. It was along with House File HR 9. We're going to push forward with it. We'll probably try to roll it in our omnibus bill to be a part of the discussions as we're moving forward. Representative Greenman may want to add something to this, but what I will say is that the Senate will not move on this. In fact, when they came out with their budget priorities, they made this kind of the boogeyman, saying that we will not be talking about or discussing anything with voter restoration rights. So again, it goes back to, we need to have a pro-democracy Senate. We don't have that yet. And that goes across a broad spectrum. We just need to have folks that want to represent what the people actually want and not what a small minority of folks actually want. But that bill will be wrapped into our omnibus bill, and we'll keep fighting for it, but it looks like the Senate's not going to hear it at all.
Right. Well, perhaps that's a segue to what I think we can enjoy as our last question tonight. But if you've got any more questions, we'll try to respond to them in an email. And that is regarding the whole nature of having some bipartisan support around some of these democracy issues. We get asked often around ranked choice voting, it's true around voter restoration, almost every other democracy bill, is there bipartisan support? And Secretary Simon, I know you had to leave early. If you're still with us, is there some hope, at least around some of your smaller bills, around some bipartisan support? And it's just the nature of the beast right now. There used to be bipartisan support around some of these issues, and that's changed. And that's an important conversation. Secretary Simon, are you still with us? I think he had to leave. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to that issue? Just raise your hand. And unmute yourself if I can't see you.
I can speak to this as somebody who watched the GOP in State Gov Finance vote against Steve's technical bill, our Secretary of State's technical bill, which actually didn't have much policy in it at all. It was a technical bill. I think that, and this is something that I feel really strongly about, having been in this space, for 15 years, as we have seen where we have gotten. And I think that we hear Republicans say, well, it doesn't have bipartisan support. And my answer is there is spots on the bill for you to co-author. Like you don't, like, the fact that you have opted out of this does not mean it's a partisan issue. And when you go to the Minnesotans, when you look at these issues, and George Beck will tell you about disclosure having 82% of Minnesotans, public financing, rights restoration, all of these issues, right? And so I think that what we need to, like, we as folks who care about this, the bipartisanship is not a norm, it is a strategic way we get stuff done. But like, Democrats and Republicans could all get together and create terrible policy that wouldn't make it better, right? So I think that's between friends. But the point that I think we need to make is we need to reject the premise that somehow bipartisanship is a value. What is important is the value of these nonpartisan issues that expand access to every Minnesotan, regardless of what party they are in, or if they don't have any party at all. And so we have to deal with the realities of how we are going to pass policy, which is we are going to do our electoral work. But there has not been a conversation there's a bunch of stuff that I think are things that, we passed in red states and blue states, and in my bill, 32 states have a bunch of this stuff. And so when they talk to me about bipartisanship, what I say is, like, there's lots of bipartisan legislation in here, and please sign on. And I think we all need to get into a place where we can't let their unwillingness to engage in the conversation be a reason to let the Minnesotans down who are asking and demanding a stronger voice.
Thank you, Representative Greenman. We couldn't agree more. These issues are so important for the future of our democracy, and to make sure that we're responsive to the vast majority of American people and Minnesotans who really want to see these issues move forward. So we'll continue to do that important work. That will conclude our Q&A. Thanks for all the great questions, everybody, and to everyone who came to engage in today's conversation. These town halls are just springboards. They're not conclusive in any way. They are just an opportunity to bring us together in conversations about what really matters to us. And we're so grateful for all of you who are engaging with us. And a huge thanks to Secretary Simon and Chair Martin and Mike Osterholm and all of our state legislators for spending time on these issues and in your service to our state and to our country. You know better than all of us how badly we need a government that is inclusive and representative and responsive to the needs of all of us. It is clear we need democracy reform now more than ever. And look at all of you helping make that happen. We couldn't be more fortunate. We have your backs and we know you have ours, and we're going to move forward together. So we're going to put in chat right now a few ways all of you can stay engaged in the work of FairVote Minnesota, clean elections, and the other issues that you've been hearing about tonight. And I want to remind everyone, if you haven't seen the notice already, we have another engaging event coming up with Women Leading Democracy Forward with Representative Kelly Morrison and Senator Melissa Franzen and Harvard professor Danielle Ellen, and that's on April 6th. We hope most of you can return to hear that conversation as well. So we're placing some information in the chat right now. Please look at that, and we'll make sure that that's in your email follow-up you'll get to us, that you'll get from us soon as well. So with that, I just want to again thank everyone for coming, and let's make these reforms happen. Enjoy your Sunday evening, everybody. Bye.